Well, good morning. It's April 2nd, and I am now delivering roundtable two. This is so that we can all get prepared for the upcoming April 27th town meeting. So today's session, I'm going to spend maybe 15 minutes or so. I want to go over the basic procedures on how to participate. More importantly, last year, town council introduced to us a new rule on how to make changes to articles that are presented. There is a form that needs to be used, and there's some specifics on the correct way to use that form and how we need to treat amendments. So what does that mean? Let's say that you are looking at the approved warrant sometime next week after, let's say, April 9th. I believe that that will be the date that it will be posted on the website. And you go through it and you look at one of the articles and say, I'm not comfortable with this, or I have an idea to make things better or different. So the way to do that is you're going to have to write out in detail on a form what those recommended changes are, and you're going to have to read that statement that you write openly at town meeting. I will recommend that maybe this would be beneficial for some of us if we want to make changes to an existing article, to do this writing on this form, maybe type it out in advance. The general idea is you think about doing it at the town meeting, and then you have to write down using a pencil or a pen the words of what you want to change and how you want to change it. It has to be really detailed. And then you have to speak out what you write. So especially if it's complicated, or if there's a lot of words that you need to use to change the amendment, I recommend doing a little bit of homework, taking a look at the warrant in advance online, collecting your ideas, typing out what you want to say, putting it into the form, and then hold on to it. I'll show you the procedure on how to implement that at town meeting. So that's the only a little bit of a wrinkle, a little bit of a complication. In the old days, we would just openly say, I want to make an amendment, and then we'd talk about it and work through it verbally, but now it has to be written. So let me show you my procedures document, and then I will show you that form, and we'll go through it together. So I put together this morning this simple procedures form, and I'm simply going to highlight the information that's available in the insert in the packet that you will receive at town meeting. This is the same insert that I developed last year, and it basically gives us the 5 operating principles to participate in Groveland's town meeting. I won't go through all of these words. I'll just go over the basics. If you need a copy of this, please send me an email, damorecos@gmail.com, damorecos@gmail.com. I'd be happy to send it to you. So 5 operating principles. I'll review these with you right now, and then I'll put a little bit of a asterisk, or I'll flag the procedural change on how to use the form that will be required if you want to make a change to an existing article. All right. Believe it or not, I'm still going to get this done in 15 minutes, I hope. So once an article on the meeting's warrant is openly announced, the main motion is made to present it to the public for discussion and voting. So we're going to be looking at a big screen. There's going to be an article up there. There's going to be a summary at the bottom of it. The summary is going to be read out this year by Rebecca, our Bosher, our vice chair. And maybe this year we'll do what we did last year. We may decide to suspend reading the entire article, so we can just read it ourselves on the screen. It'll be summarized, but then at some point I'm going to finally say, would anybody like to make a motion on this article? Are we going to talk about it? Are we going to do anything about it? Well, of course. So that's what that is. Someone will make a motion. After the motion is made, typically the town moderator will grant 2 minutes for the mover of the motion to explain it. Sometimes the mover of the motion is someone that has an interest or is sponsoring that article. Oftentimes they can be subject matter specialists in that article. So basically, after the motion is made, typically that person, I will grant 2 minutes for that mover of the motion to explain it to us. Then the town moderator will invite other individuals to comment on the motion for or against it, or sometimes people are just asking for more information, or can you explain some detail, or I need a clarification. So we have a very healthy discussion. I give people typically 2 minutes to make statements either for or against the motion. And that's basically how we introduce the big topics or the things that we need to vote on at town meeting. Before a vote, a citizen board committee may wish to make a change to the motion known as the amendment. And that's what I'll cover at the end of going over the basics, okay? That's where we need to now use the form. Step number 2, any voter wishing to address the meeting must first gain the attention of the town moderator when next in queue at a time. So basically, we're going to have microphones set up at different parts of the room. You approach the microphone. I will ask for you to name who you are and what your address is, and then you've got a couple of minutes. I'm not going to say you have 2 minutes. Just remember you got a couple of minutes to make a statement. I love this idea. I hate this idea. Or I want to make a change. And then if you do, you're going to have to get busy with the form, which I'll show you how that works. So any voter wishing to address the meeting must first gain the attention of the town moderator when next in queue at a time. No other speaker is on the floor. Typically 2 minutes is granted. For contentious issues, do we have any? I don't know, maybe not this year. The town moderator will limit comments by multiple speakers who have repeated key points from past speakers. Now, if we have a really big issue and people, we have a little bit of a contentious situation, it's an important issue. People are passionate about it. I certainly will allow people to express themselves, but what could get to a point where if people are getting in line and saying the same things that have already been said, I will respectfully ask if you could accept the courtesy of not speaking or repeating things that have already been repeated. I will always ask people with courtesy, of course, and with respect. We need to be mindful of time as well, and we don't want to turn the meeting into a very, very long, late evening meeting, because that produces a condition that makes the meeting uncomfortable. People can get tired. They may get up and leave. And then we might even have a problem where we might go below 100 people and then have to stop the meeting because we don't have quorum. We need at least 100 people to come to the meeting. Hopefully this year we'll have a lot more than we did last year. And last year was a very good number. Please don't quote me. I thought we were 130, 140, I think. Don't quote me, but it was comfortably over 100. So let's keep that process going. Number 3, any person who speaks for or against an issue or moves an article by motion or amendment, which I'll explain how the amendment works now, has a financial or economic interest, needs to let people know openly. They have to disclose. So if there's, let's say, an article on something having to do with real estate, and that you have an economic benefit or an impact to you, especially a benefit, when you speak to the issue, either for or against, you want to disclose to the public at town meeting that you have a beneficial interest. That's a key word right there, beneficial interest. Okay, so it's just a disclosure. That's really important. Number 4, when amendments are presented, the town moderator retains discretion to rule to allow it to pass, sometime by consulting with an interested board or committee member or town council. Again, that's going to fall on using the form. So I'm going to show how that works in a minute. And I've actually written some basic steps. Again, I can send this to you in advance, especially if you have an interest after studying the warrant before the meeting. It's going to be posted online, hopefully next a week from today, or the latest a week from tomorrow, the 9th, I believe, or the 10th at the latest. You may want to go in there, you go through the warrants and say, hey, you know what? I have an opinion about changing that warrant. So do your homework, prepare the form in advance. Don't send it to me in advance. You have to wait till you get to the floor. You certainly could share it with me in advance if you are looking for, ways to express what it is that you're trying to express. I can help you wordsmith it if you'd like. We can try that, but we can't process it. And I'm not going to make that public. I'm just going to help you write it if that is something that you may need help with, or if you have a question about it. And certainly you could do that on the floor too, live and unrehearsed, or you could see me before the meeting and say, hey, I have an idea about changing. What do you think? How should I do that? I'll help you if I can, before the meeting. So anyways, remember that until we have electronic voting, if that ever changes, that little device, we're going to continue to use the 400-year-old method of aye or nay, or ayes or aye or nay, meaning yes or no. And we're going to do basically a voice vote. And if it's not, we're not sure if we have a majority either way on an article, I may ask for some counters, some volunteers to go and count people's hands. So I'll say, okay, let's do the vote again and raise our hands. Okay. This should all be relatively familiar to people that have regularly attended town meeting. But here, my hope and my goal is that we continue the trend that we started last year, and that is to have the minimum amount of people come in, be well above the quorum minimum of 100. Let's do 130 to 150 to 160. And to do that without an extremely contentious or really, really controversial article, I don't think there will be any this year. There might be. So check in next week, because I'm going to sit on a meeting, again, my second one with the select board on this coming Monday. They probably will put the final touches on the articles. And then next week, I have a meeting with Rebecca, our town administrator, along with town council. And that's when I'm going to have an opportunity to do a deep dive. I already have a draft copy, which I can't share publicly because it's not approved. But I've got some homework to do this weekend, other than Easter Sunday. I'm going to spend some time going through the articles, trying to understand what all the key issues are, but I can't go public with it. I can't share it with anybody because it's not approved yet, and changes are underway. But the final result will be next week. Okay, so now let's go into Groveland Town Meeting motion to amend form. What to do if you want to change. I miswrote that. If you want to change an article, the goal is to express the words in writing using the motion to amend form. And I'll get that corrected before I send it out to anyone if anybody asks for this. It may be beneficial to prepare this in advance of the meeting. Step one, a motion is made, just like we normally do. Second asked for and offered. In other words, okay, is there a second? Yes, okay. Now, typically, I will say does anybody have an opinion about this? Can we discuss it? Normally, people will discuss the article the way it's designed. But then I'm going to introduce a second one because I know that you've notified me at the meeting, or perhaps even beforehand. You raise your hand and you show that you have the paper. Say, okay, well, so-and-so is going to suggest an amendment to this article. And that's when I was going to say, if you want to change it, and the town motto will ask you to read out from the motion to the amend form, then it is brought to the panel to be handed over to the town clerk. So you read from the form, the words that you wrote, and then you walk over and bring it to the town clerk. Typically, she will share it with town council. Now, this is really important. If the amended article is voted on, meaning passed, in other words, you make a suggestion, you write it on a piece of paper, you bring it, you deliver the words exactly as written. People get excited about your idea. They say, yes, we're going to pass it. the town moderator will restate the original motion and then add the following words, passed as amended. So in other words, we're going to hear your words, the words that you wrote on the form. You're going to pass it over to the town clerk. Then I'm going to probably read the original motion again and then add the words passed as amended, meaning that congratulations, you had a great idea and people thought it was a great idea and said yes. If the amended article fails, if your idea is great only to you, but not enough people to say yes, the town moderator will ask for a vote on the amendment and then add these words. Let's vote on the original motion without amendment. We're going to vote again. We're going to make sure that we're voting on the original motion without the amendment because the amendment that you suggested failed. Here's when things get a little bit grayish. If the town meeting votes for an amended on an article, in other words, you were successful in persuading voters to pass an article with the changes you made using the motion to amend form, town council right there on the spot will review it. And in some situations, the town council will announce that it is outside the scope of the original article, or it may be even worse than that. There's some other legally defective condition that he is anticipating. So at that time, the council may declare additional legal review will have to be made after the meeting, or he'll say, okay, you can proceed, but you got to be cautious. In either of these situations, most likely what I will do, I will ask you, the writer of the amended article, would you consider withdrawing the amendment? And let's go back to the original article without your amendment, because the town council is telling us, warning, 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 there's something wrong with this, or potentially could be wrong with it. Or in some cases, we'll just say, you know, we need to look into this before we can actually implement this. If you write an amendment that is rejected by town council, I will ask you to provide the courtesy to withdraw it. Simple enough. We don't want to have a floor fight. You might have a great idea, but if the town council says, well, I'm not sure, we got to look into it a little bit more, or it's flatly not good, then I'm going to say, would you consider taking back that amendment? Let's vote the original article again. And what I will promise you is I'll ask you to return either to a special meeting or a town meeting in the future to reintroduce it if it is actionable. Sometimes you could introduce an idea that town council simply needs some time to review legally. Well, we can't do it that night. It would have to be done after that night. So why not allow the original article to be voted on, and then if we need to make changes afterwards, we'll try to do that. So it's a little touch and go here. It's a little grayish, but people are going to be respected at town meeting. We have a really good history. We've had limited history of true floor fights, I call them. And last year, I'm very happy to have seen the result that we collectively created. It was a good meeting, and we had some pretty big issues on there. I remember probably one of the biggest ones that was handled so wonderfully was the water treatment facility and the lots of money that we needed to produce to be able to invest in that. So what I did, which is what I plan to do this year, I have already called on a couple of folks in town who I consider subject matter specialists in a couple of articles that I think are complex and could be potentially controversial. And so therefore, in order to help us understand those articles, the complex ones, I'm going to have people that know those articles well, especially if they were part of the process of sponsoring that article. So I hope this was helpful. Again, my email is Damorcos, Damorecos. I'll make a correction on my procedures form in a few minutes, and if you send it out to me, that email, I'll send it to you. And I also have this to show you. How about this? How about this right here? How about the form itself? How about you getting that in advance? You can see what it looks like. This is why I think if you're very passionate and very sure that you want to make a change to an article that you saw online 1 or 2 weeks before the meeting, what's wrong with having the form in your hand and you write it out before the meeting? Can't act on it. I can certainly look at it if you want me to and maybe help you wordsmith it a little bit better, but I'm not going to give you legal advice. I'm not going to say it's right or wrong. I'm just going to give you the opportunity to prepare, because it is rather awkward to come up with a brilliant idea right there, live and unrehearsed, and then you have to furiously have to write down the words with the correct grammar, punctuation, and spacing. It has to be really precise. And then when you read it out, it has to be exactly the way you wrote it. And then you have to pass that in and so forth, so on. To me, it seems like if I had an idea, I want to change an article, why don't I do my homework and write this out in advance and then walk into the meeting with it? Seems to me to be a sensible solution. At least let's try that out. And unless town council says that something we can't do, then I think we should do it. If we can't do it, I've got at least 5 more roundtables coming up. So the first one is a basic helicopter view of the budget. I did that last night. The second one is this one, procedures. And then the third, fourth, and fifth are going to be 2 subject matter specialists in 2 areas on articles. I won't mention what they are because they're in process of being finalized. And then I'm also going to invite our vice chair to give us some samples and read out some samples of summaries. This is all hopefully designed to help you gain interest and awareness and solicit your participation and enthusiasm to make this town meeting a great one. So thanks again for your care and your courtesies, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.